Rusty Nelson and welcome to my video blog. And as most of you know, I'd usually be outside chasing that weather with my camera because my camera is my best excuse for adventure. As you also know, my videos are not sponsored by anybody. They're not polished. I just like having fun and getting the information out to you so you can have fun on your adventure. And printing is an adventure all in its own, and I love doing it. Now, I just purchased this Canon PROGRAF 1000, and it's the smaller of a line of three of the 2000 and 4000 that Canon recently put out last year. And I figure I'd get you to come along as I put it together, get it up and running. And that's the box it came in, and it weighs in around 70 pounds. So unless you got big muscles, I would highly suggest you grab somebody to help you out. I'm sure you didn't want to see me struggle to get it out of the box, but I'll quickly show you what is included in the box. Your normal software, you have some paper that comes from Canon. I will say that Canon is pretty open to using third-party profiles, papers, and such. But if you sign up for my blog, we'll get into that later about profiling. And yes, that was my phone. Profiling and papers, and I'll keep doing video blogs a lot on printing and color management. So make sure you sign up on my blog at rustynelson.com. Inks, printer head. Cool thing about the printer head with Canon, it is replaceable. Other companies, you've got to have somebody come into service or go out and service it. So not too much in here. And then we have the unit itself. It is still raining and howling out there like a bad dog right now, but I'm going to stay in here and keep with this. What I would really recommend is that you run through these, I'll call them maps for lack of a better word, but how to get the printer up and running. And I'll just hit on a couple of keynotes before we actually get started. One thing to think about is actually how, or I should say where you're going to put the printer, because you need, once this gets folded out, you need about 15 inches behind, you need 15 inches in front, 2 inches on either side, and this is 17 inches deep. So that's a total of 50 inches while you're operating it. The other thing too is you don't want it on anything that's too flimsy. This is actually a fairly stable table, and I have it braced in between these two units right here so that when it's actually printing and going back and forth, it's not shaking. That's not something that you want. We've already got it out of the box. Then we're going to go back in and start pulling all the tape off. We're going to plug it in. The important thing is here, do not connect the USB prior to plugging the unit in. Putting the ink in, what we want to do is shake the ink back and forth 5-6 times or so gently to start mixing up the inks. Inks look fairly simple to put in, and then we're going to put in the print head, jump onto the back of this. So far it looks fairly simple and straightforward. The cool thing about this is you're not even going to need a manual because most of the information is going to come right up on your little LCD screen. The next thing is to put the paper in there. They call it MP101, which is a matte Canon paper, but in reality I believe through Canon you can use pretty much any A4 paper or matte paper. You just don't want to use gloss. Then we're going to align the head and go through a few more things. The only thing else we have to really think about is how we're going to connect it. I will probably go through a wired LAN. The thing about the wireless is that it runs fairly slow, and I don't believe that you can get firmware updates. They call this, the wireless, they call this, Canon calls it direct connect. But anyway, I think it's a little bit slower, and you don't get your firmware updates through there. I'm actually going to jump onto another camera here so I don't have to hand hold this. Start pulling this apart, I'm sure this is going to get kind of boring here really quick, so I will probably speed this up. As you can see, this kind of takes up a pretty big area once we have it all extended. That was fairly easy. Now I guess we get to move on to the next part. Step number 3 is simply to plug the unit in. Kind of doing this blind. Make sure that's snug. You don't want that coming out in the middle of a print, that's for sure. And the next step, once we move on, is to actually turn the unit on. Here goes the big moment. Turn this sucker on. Yeah, there we go. English. That was quick. We're going to start setup. And it looks like the next item is tank cover is closed. Jump right down here and open this up. I'm going to start grabbing some ink and we're going to start installing that. I figured I'd get a quick screenshot of the LCD so you can see how easy Canon's made this for you to install these inks, and I'm imagining to go ahead and do the printer head and the rest of the work, and it's pretty simple. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the inks, and that is there's actually 12 cartridges. So you have a couple of blacks, you have a couple of grays. As you can see right here, each cartridge is easily labeled for you, and there's one called a chroma optimizer. Now what that does is actually applies I'll call it a clear coat for lack of a better term, that prevents what some people call bronzing. It also helps with reflected light. So as per the instructions, you want to take each one of these and shake it 5-6 times gently, not you know, probably about what I'm doing right there. Open up each cartridge. Now, I know some people have made the mistake of thinking that this is actually a cap that you would pull off, but it's not. Look at the name on the end, make sure you have the right name, and that's just the way it goes into the machine. This is MBK, or medium black. And just push it in, you don't need to force anything, and that is about it. Now, one thing you want to make sure is that you don't stick your fingers in here or do anything crazy like that or try to clean anything. Everything's just fine the way it is. Wow, I had to close the blind simply because it was raining, blowing so hard I could barely hear myself. We're not used to this in California, but we're almost up to installing the print head, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. That's actually one of the cool parts about this is that you as a user can actually install the print head yourself. So if you have a problem with the print head, you can order another one. If you got clogged nozzles, whatever the reason is, and you need to replace the head, you can just order one up, snap it in, and you can do it all yourself. You don't have to ship it out to have it fixed or have somebody come in. Also, just like I was talking about, we're not used to rain here, so these heads monitor the head temperature and the environmental conditions and help to keep the constant flow of ink so that you have good images all the time, whether it's humid outside or whether it's dry like it is most of the time around here. Something else really cool is the anti-clogging feature. As this head sweeps back and forth, it's a really wide head, 1.28 inches I think, but as the head sweeps back and forth, it actually monitors with a light system in there, and if it sees where a head or a nozzle is clogged, it will actually go back on the next sweep and fill in that spot. Now when you're doing wide format printing, that's a nice little feature to have because you don't ruin your print because you simply had a nozzle fail. it'll detect it, go back and fix it right in the middle of the print. Other thing is we have 2 black channels actually in the head, so you leave both black inks in there. You don't have to change them out. It's about that time. Let's go ahead and see how easy this thing is to install. Like I said, this LCD seems to be making this pretty easy. It even tells you to open the cover. You just pull this first lever back, pull this cover out, lift this up. I mean, this is pretty wild. Let's see, I guess you can barely see this, but it's even telling you each thing to lift and open. Let's go ahead and we'll open this up. I want to make sure that we don't touch any of this, and also make sure that the circuit board, that we don't touch and get any oils on there. I guess it helps if you pull those off. I hope that by going through this kind of sets your mind at ease and shows you how easy this is in installing this. As soon as this gets done, we'll jump out to the next step. Next step, head alignment is required. Load a sheet of specified paper MP101 in the rear tray and select OK. So this first thing we got to do is open this up, and like I said, I've read on the internet that basically this is a matte paper, and the big thing is you can use plain paper. You just don't want to use gloss paper. Now the paper itself does have a small chip out of the corner right here, and this is to help you to make sure you get it aligned correctly. Select connection method. We are a wired LAN connection. Connect the Etherlink cable, then press OK. I'll get right back to you as soon as I do that. Just connected the Ethernet cable, which is just over here on the left hand side of the computer, and it says connect Ethernet cable, then press OK. The feed slot cover of the rear tray is open. Close the feed slot cover and select OK. This is not going to let me make a mistake. Performing initial adjustments. Do not turn off power. Meanwhile, C, getting started, and continue with the setup procedure on the computer or smartphone. Let's jump onto the computer while the printer's doing its thing. I think we're starting to see daylight at the end of the tunnel. There are basically 3 ways that you can load your software onto the computer and get things working together. The first of those is to use the disk that comes inside the box. And out of the 3, this is definitely my least favorite, and the big reason is the fact that it is not updated. So once you load it onto the system, you are going to have to actually update it. The other 2 ways we're going to cover here, and the strange thing is you'll see they all lead to basically the same place. Let's get started. The second of these is actually the way I did it, but I don't recommend doing it this way. I'll show you how I do recommend doing it after trying all of them. Go directly to the Canon website. Make sure it is the Canon website and not a driver download site. Type in so you get the Pro 1000 and go to the Pro 1000 page. When you get there, there'll be a couple of places where you can download things. Up top, you'll see this bar across here with the manual and the drivers and such. And on the bottom, you'll see where you can download the whole package, or you can download them individually. We'll talk about the XPS driver here in a little bit more in detail later, and I'll explain that to you. The second way is to use the URL, and this is great, this is the way I like doing it, that is supplied on the map that we were looking at on the second page. Go to that URL, and we'll see this a little bit later. You should put this in your bookmark so you can get back to it. And you can get just tons of information on here. This is the online manual, which you can go ahead and take a look at when you go to this button. And on here you'll find just about anything you need, from working with different operating systems to error codes, enhanced printing options, how to work in Mac OS, Android, and you'll even get an explanation of the different parts for the printer. This is kind of funny actually when you look at the way things are named. This is the manual feed on the back of the printer. That's not exactly what I would call it, but that's what they call it, especially when we go back and flip to the front view. We see that this is actually called the rear feed. So go figure on that one. You'll also see there's a bunch of frequently asked questions. Go through these. You could probably spend 3 days in here, but you're going to see a lot of the problems that you may get confronted with and a lot of the frequently asked questions. Go ahead and click into Setup, and I'm in the United States. Scroll down to Pro 1000, and you're going to see this actually leads into the same place whether you do it the way I did it off of the site or you do it this way. So they both work really well. If you click on this, performing printer installation while viewing videos, you'll come to a page that has a bunch of little tiny clips basically covering exactly what I just covered, what you just watched. But you may want to give it a try if you get hung up on some area, because they're actually pretty good. There's just no dialogue. It's just a picture of doing the installation. Go ahead and click on connecting to a computer and you'll see all the different operating systems that you can work on. I'm on a PC, so we'll go ahead and click there. And up on the right hand side you will see the download. When you click on that for a PC, we start to see it load down here in the bottom left hand corner. I am going to speed this ahead in certain places because I know you don't want to sit here and watch this as it ticks by and load. This is the page where everybody will end up no matter which way you're downloading, unless you're loading them individually. In fact, right now I'm actually on the video part where I downloaded directly from the site. I'll go ahead and push away the background so we can concentrate on this and zoom in just a little bit. Once it downloads, we're going to get into flipping through a couple of pages and just hit agree. Then it's going to check your firewall to make sure that there's nothing blocking it. Do not uncheck this. Leave it to deactivate the block. It'll hook it up later once you are done. Pick whatever's appropriate for you. I'm on a wired LAN and our printer should already be on. Remember, we're waiting for it to get done doing its thing and pop out that print and looking for the almighty ready to print in the LCD. It will identify your printer. If you don't understand IP address or MAC address, just look up in the left hand corner and the end numbers of your serial number be up there. Really easy to identify. Go ahead and hit next, and on the next page you'll see the URL that I was talking about that has the manual, the setup software that we saw just prior to this. So you may want to write that down if you didn't catch it, or if you want to look at it before you actually venture into buying the printer. Yes, the setup is complete. The next step is to decide if this is going to be your default printer. Only you can decide that one. In the beginning, I let this be my default printer and then later changed it back to my other printer through my operating system, since I was going to be doing a lot of printing soon after installation on this printer, and then switched it back to my other printer. After hitting next, you will come to the page where you get to select what you're actually going to install. So at this point, you can install the manual, print the My Printer, Quick Utility, and Print Studio Pro. Now I'm not going to go through these right now, but I will talk a little bit about the XPS printer and some things you have to think about. I will be talking about Print Studio Pro in another video along with the other programs, but right now, since this has to do with the installation, let's talk about the XPS print driver. On a Mac, as you go through the printing process, you'll find that you have a check mark where you can check 16-bit printing versus 8-bit printing. Now, in a Windows machine, Vista and afterwards, you actually have to use the XPS driver that's included here. And when you load it, there's a couple of caveats you need to think about. But first, in a nutshell, and to keep this really simple, 8-bit versus 16-bit may give you a little bit more definition and may help if you have that slight gradation in the sky to prevent banding. Most people say they don't see a difference. I personally go ahead and since I'm on a Windows machine, I always print through the XPS driver. Now here are the caveats. First of all, you can't load the XPS driver just by itself. You have to load the regular Canon driver first and then load the XPS driver on top of that, which is about 150 megabytes. So you can't have one without the other, and you have to load the regular driver first. If you just select XPS driver here, it will install it in the order that you need it. And when it comes time to select your printer in the print dialog box, just select XPS driver. And believe it or not, that's just about it. Go ahead and select next, and I'll skip over a bunch of these because they're kind of self-explanatory. Go ahead and fill out the user registration and restart your computer, and believe it or not, on cue, here comes my printer paper. And that's what we like to see right there, that big thing that says ready to print. I know something like this when you bring in this 70-pound monster into your house and you have to hook it up to the computer. It can be a little trying sometimes, but I have to be honest with it. Even though this is my first time doing this, I'd like to claim that I did a lot of the work, but I think the little LCD right there pretty much walked you through just about everything. And in the future, I'm going to be talking about other printing areas such as ICC profiles, color management, paper, and things that will just help you out in printing. And especially as I learn, I'm certified in Adobe Photoshop Lightroom, and I'm learning every single day. I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helps you out. Jump on over if you want to get future updates on my blog, rustynelsonblog.com. No slash, just rustynelsonblog.com. And my website is rustynelson.com. And you can also reach me on Facebook, but I look forward to see how you're doing in your projects, and I really hope you get your camera out of the bag, get out, and create your own adventure, because I'd love to see you out there. Hi, I'm Rusty Nelson, and yes, it is nasty outside, and yes, you know I would normally be out chasing that weather with my camera because my camera is my best excuse for adventure. But today I decided to come inside, get out of it,